Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Liz Lang. Each week on this podcast, we will break down various aspects of mental health. We are so excited you're here and hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hey guys, Liz Lang here with Jeremiah and Selina Woodruff from Core Connection. And this week, we are going to get into letting go without losing control. And this episode is going to center around encouraging independence in teens. So, great topic. But first, we're going to do our parenting moment, which, as a reminder, could be something funny or something that we learned, maybe something that went well or something that didn't go well throughout the week. And I, again, have this week's parenting moment because I had a great learning opportunity with my kids. So we live in Indiana, which means we get severe weather and we can get tornadoes. And I'll just give you the moral of the story at the beginning. Go over your emergency action plan with your kids today. Like, go do it. And because I know we've talked about it with our kids, but clearly it's been a long time. So, because we were getting home later in the evening and the tornado sirens start going off. And my kids go into a blind panic, like just complete blind panic. Like there's no logic, there's no reasoning. And so they just go into this blind panic and nobody knows what to do. And then to top it off, Curtis and I are disagreeing over how to handle the situation. And so it just go over your emergency action plan. I mean, and we were fine. And there was a tornado but it wasn't coming directly towards us, but we did have wind gusts. And apparently what the tornado siren is meant to do, for any of you who maybe don't know this, tornado sirens are not meant to tell you that there is a tornado. They're meant to tell you there's severe weather and to seek more information. So, because they're not meant for people inside, they're meant for anyone outside. Right? It's just meant to alert people, hey, you need to seek more information and seek shelter. Anyways, so go over your severe weather or your emergency action plan, which can go for anything, like what you're going to do if there's an earthquake, if there's a fire, right? Like just go over that with your kids.
I think that's great advice.
Yeah. So, all right, on to this week's topic. Letting go can feel really difficult because as parents, we control everything in our young kids' lives. So if you think about like a toddler, right? We choose everything for them. Like we make all their decisions for them, what they wear, what they want to eat most of the time. So as kids get older, they obviously need more independence. And as parents, we're used to just solving the problem and just finding the solutions. But that can actually stifle development. And Selina, I believe you talked about this last week, how you had gotten into the habit of just doing this and you thought that you were just, making life easier for your family, when in reality, your daughter was struggling because she didn't have confidence to feel like she could do things on her own because you were just solving all of her problems. So we're going to kind of get into that on how we can help teens learn to be independent, right? So tell me your guys' thoughts on independence in teens.
Well, there's something real quick when you're saying that. I'm thinking, you don't wait till they're teens to start allowing those opportunities for them to make choices. So when they're younger, you can find age-appropriate choices. I have friends that laugh right now because they have daughters that are, around the 11, 12-year-old age, and they're having a hard time because their daughter has more opinion about what to wear. And I was like, now is the time to let that happen because they're awkward anyways.
Yep.
They're awkward, but they're still cute. So allow them to start making those choices and exploring what their style is. So when they're 16, they will be comfortable with making those choices and understanding what it is that they like. And then they won't seem so awkward trying to do makeup and clothes and stuff at that age when that matters a little more to them.
Yeah, good point.
I think this topic can be a little bit scary for parents. I know once upon a time it really was for me. As your children start to grow up and want that independence. We're afraid that if we allow them the freedom to choose, they're going to make terrible choices and everything's going to go wrong. And eventually they're going to end up getting somebody pregnant or being pregnant. And we just like blow it all up in our minds. And the reality is that some of those things could happen, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And they also need that opportunity to learn and grow, like Selina talked about. And it really does start at a pretty young age. But moving into those teen years, we move more into a space of guiding them instead of like managing and directing every aspect of their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, the world is scary because there is a lot that can go wrong, but eventually they are going to leave your house, hopefully. Right? So eventually they will make their own decisions. And what could happen is if they haven't had enough freedom, when they get too much freedom, they're just going to go nuts and they're going to try and do all the things, right? And oftentimes that's when they make poor decisions, is because they go from having not enough freedom to too much freedom. And so there are ways to safely do this and to hopefully have built and developed connection so that if your teen is put in, a tough situation, they call you, or, they're able to bail themselves out, or they're able to talk to you about it. So one thing that I think this can start with early, and this kind of ties in, but it's something that's kind of been on my mind for a while, and that is privacy with kids. And, obviously my 5-year-old still needs help, like bathing and whatnot. And he also just doesn't care, but sometimes he does care. Sometimes he's like, no, I want to do it myself. I want you in your room. And it's important to respect that, right? When your kid wants privacy. And at first I'm like, well, but he wants it sometimes, but not all the time. It's still important to respect that privacy when they do want it. And it's the same thing with my 8-year-old. She still needs help washing her hair, right? And so I help her with that. But when she's changing, like for bed in the evenings, she wants privacy. And so it's important to respect that. So one of the things that I was thinking about that can be a boundary is their journals. Parents think, oh, maybe I should read their journal so I can find out if they're doing something that they shouldn't be. That's a violation of privacy, in my opinion. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I think it gets to be a little bit tricky. Absolutely, they need their privacy. When it comes to things like journals, we got to be a little bit careful. Of course, we want them to be able to write their interpersonal thoughts and feelings without being afraid that somebody else might read them.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, I would say, yeah, leave it alone. But there may come a time, like you have to remember that as a parent, you're responsible for their well-being. And if there's some evidence or some serious concern, then maybe we might have to cross over that boundary a little bit and take a peek at things to make sure that they're safe. But I would say it's probably a pretty rare situation.
Yeah.
It's really hard to answer that question in general for this podcast, but that's because every situation is going to be unique and different.
Mm-hmm.
Every child is unique and different. And as a parent, sometimes you got to go with your gut. Sometimes you just got to do what's got to be done to keep them safe and make sure that they're okay.
I think in general, yes, we're going to want to strive to be able to let them have their independence and have their privacy. I don't know. I believe in mother's intuition, though. If you feel like something's going on and something tells you need to read their journal, I feel like you have that responsibility as a parent to maybe cross that line that you wouldn't normally. Again, like Jeremiah said, there's lots of different situations and you could justify that, I'm sure, in lots of ways. But I feel like you've got to go with how you feel. And if you think that there's a danger and you're feeling like that is something that is directing you to look into things further, then you have that right. I think cell phones go along in this line.
Yes.
Because I have the belief, we have the belief that I'm paying for it. It's not your phone. Yes. And so I know that sometimes things are come back at like, oh, it's my phone. I need to have privacy. But I think a general rule, and obviously parents make their own choices, but in our home, I pay for the phone. So it's my phone. So whatever material or things that are on that phone is for me to be able to look at freely.
And our children know that.
Right.
They know that right from the beginning when they receive access to the phone that, hey, like, don't put anything on here that you wouldn't want us to see or read because it's subject to our examination at any time should we feel the need. And I know that's a tough one for a lot of parents, and there's a lot of different thoughts on that. But like Selina said, and we've said in the past, like, you got to figure out what's right for your family and where those boundaries lie for your family. But as a parent, I don't know that I would really stop at just about anything to keep my kids safe. Like I would do anything I needed to, even if that hurt their feelings for a moment. In general, let's give them their space and allow them to have that privacy. But if I thought that going through a journal might save their life or avoid something incredibly serious, then I would do it without hesitation.
I feel like the same thing could almost be said in terms of like going through their room. And in general, parents should not be snooping through their kids' room just to find information. But if there's concern that they are hiding something, like maybe they have drugs or something dangerous in the home, and that in that instance, that yes, it's their room, but it is within your home and you have a responsibility for everything that's happening in your home. So I think the thing is, though, is when you do have to go through their room, you don't do it behind their back, right? Like you say, hey, we're going to do this, right? Just so it's out in the open, and not that you have to give them warning or give them a chance to hide stuff or move things around, right? Move something out of the room. But just if you're worried, I'm concerned, I hope that it's nothing, but we're going to go. I'm going to go through your room. I don't care if you're here or not, but I'm doing it. Right. So that kind of a thing. That's a good boundary you can set. Okay. So hopefully you can avoid those types of serious situations, right? Like hopefully, I mean, and obviously as parents, we can do all the right things and those can still happen. But one of the things that you can do to maybe help prevent that is by slowly giving them more privileges, right? So slowly giving them more control and more decisions. So one of the things that can be tough is worrying about peer influence, right? And that can also be really tough in terms of letting go. So my very sweet 8-year-old, her family is her whole world. And she just loves being around mom and dad. Whereas in contrast to my 12-year-old, she loves being around her friends. And it's not that she doesn't still love her family, but she's just at that age that's just developmentally normal and appropriate for your friends to become really important. That can be scary and that can be difficult for parents because they feel like they're losing control of their kid. And you're not, but you are going to lose influence. You're not going to have as much influence because there's going to come a time when friends are going to have more of an influence over your kiddo than you are. So talk to me about that aspect of the teen parent dynamic.
I feel like I want to disagree that you can still have that influence on them. It all is based on that relationship that you have with them. And yeah, friends are super important. They're looking for validation from other people. They're trying to figure out who they are. But if you have that connection and you have that relationship already established, and again, something you can work on and continue to build if that's not there. But I feel like you can have the same influence that friends do on your kids.
And I think maybe a little bit of definition here might be helpful. I think maybe we're talking about two different things. One of those things being control versus influence. So we certainly lose the control over our children because as teenagers in that developmental stage, they're figuring out who they are and they suddenly recognize, I don't actually have to do what my mom and dad told me to do. There may be consequences and I may not like them, but I'm free to make whatever choice I choose to make. And so we do lose some of the control. But like Selina said, if the connection is there, we have the influence. That's why you're going to hear us talk over and over and over again about connection, probably on every single podcast, that need to build and develop the connection. And of course, ideally, that starts at a much younger age and just like letting go of control and allowing choices and decisions. But if you haven't gone that route, that's okay, because we can rebuild connections, we can improve connections, and we can do that through making wise decisions as parents and through some hard work and effort.
Right. Yeah. And I agree. You're not just going to you're not going to lose like complete influence over your kid. Like you still will hopefully still be able to be an influence in their life. But I guess, from mine and Curtis's perspective, it was almost a little scary when our 12-year-old would come home and she's like, well, I believe this and I think this way. And we're like, okay. And it's clear that she was hearing things from her friends. And, in those instances, it's not that we didn't just invalidate the way she feels, but it was definitely a good opportunity for a discussion. And, we will never stop teaching her. I mean, at least while she's living under our house, right? Living under our roof. We'll never stop teaching her, like, our beliefs and the things that we think and things that we value and that we think are important. But it's pretty normal for kids to develop their own ideas, their own thoughts, and their own opinions about the world. And those are often going to be influenced by friends.
Absolutely. I had it explained to me once. I think I've already shared it on here, but that it's kind of like math, right? We're addition and subtraction to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not that they don't need us, but now they've moved on to algebra. So they're getting new information, new thoughts, new validation from outside of us. So they still need us and they need our guidance and our influence for them too. But yes, they're exploring a new concept and a new idea and trying to figure out what it is that they believe and what they think and who they are.
And it is a little bit scary, but I think the important thing to remember here is that you want your children to have their own thoughts. You want them to have their own ideas. Otherwise, they're going to be eaten up by society. They're not going to have the capacity to form their own opinions about things and to move forward without the assistance of somebody else. So you want that strong-minded, that strong will, even if it's different than what you believe or what you want in your life. And I realize that is scary and challenging for a lot of us. But as we nurture that and we allow that, especially within our own home, that builds confidence, which builds connection, which gives us as parents a greater ability to influence throughout their lives rather than just, the first 10 or 11, 12 years of life. We could do it as teens and we can do it as adults. We can have that influence if we have the connection and the mutual respect that is necessary for that to happen.
It's only scary because of what we're thinking about it. So what if we just decide that everything's going to be okay? Even if your kids have challenges and they go down paths that you don't think that are ideal for them, what if you just decide that that's just part of the path that they have and that's what they have to experience to become who they need to be? And so our thoughts about those things are that it's wrong or this is a problem. So if we just decide that everything is going to be okay and that no matter what happens or what comes about from choices, we will figure it out, that's going to help you be in a lot better space than operating from fear and wanting to control, and that you can be able to allow things to happen and learn and grow from them.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's give a good example that I feel like could be very applicable to a lot of parents. And I know a lot of our base is, well, at least used to be in Salt Lake. And so, but is probably in the Salt Lake and Idaho area. And religion is pretty prevalent, right, out in those areas. And it can be really scary when kids decide maybe they no longer believe in the faith that you've raised them in. And this could happen in any religious denomination, right? And so, like, you have a kid who decides they no longer believe or they want to switch to a different faith, or maybe they've joined a faith and you're like, I don't know how I feel about this, right? And so, to an extent, while they're living under your home, it's totally fair and reasonable for you to set certain boundaries, and especially in kind of that preteen, tween, and early teen area, right? Like, so, for example, when your kid is like, I don't know, at least through like 13 or 14, I think it's okay to say, no, you're still going to go to church with us, right? And you're still going to attend our church. But it can be scary as parents when they maybe start to say, I don't know if I believe in this, or I don't know if I want to do this. So what are your guys' thoughts on this? Or maybe I want to do something different, right? I want to believe something different and be something different, and how you can handle that.
Well, what I just said, I want to challenge your brain again. The
Yeah.
only reason your fear
Mhm.
or it's a problem is because you're thinking it's a problem.
Right.
So when you're thinking this is a problem, then that's what you're going to experience, and it's going to be wrong for you, and it is going to be scary and feel out of control. But when we go back to those curiosity, like, I wonder why they're experiencing this. I wonder what they're thinking. I wonder why they believe this, or like, what do they believe? Like, I'm really interested in this, and I'm really interested where they've come from with this, and why they think that. But again, absolutely, like you said, it's your home. Whatever age they are, you can make those rules and expectations for your home, that if you live in our home, this is what our home does. Obviously, other things that we've taught with that is, coming together and making agreements and making those choices together also would be ideal. I realize that doesn't always happen in the way that we want.
Mm-hmm.
But also, just to touch on that, we have stories for other people. We think that teenagers should do this, or our children should do this, or husbands should do this. So when our kids start doing things that are different than the story we have for them, it is scary and it does feel out of control. So maybe questioning our story that we have for that child, and maybe wondering why we have that story, and is that a correct story? Because what if the story is something different than what we think it should be?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about a lot of religions out there, but our home is very faith-based, and religion is a big part of who we are and what we do. And the reality is that we don't really want our children forced into that either.
Yeah.
And we tend to try and force that, and we take away that really important gift that we've all been given, and that's agency. The agency to make whatever choice we want, good or bad, and then to live with the consequences of those decisions. So as parents, we don't get to take away that agency, but as Selina mentioned, it's your home. You set whatever rules you want. We certainly have rules in our home for those who live under our roof. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're 25. I wouldn't allow you to have drugs in my home, or certain types of things, or do certain activities in my home. I just wouldn't allow it. And so everybody's going to be different again. And the way they handle that, I think the reality is I want my children to explore what they actually believe. I don't want them to just believe something on a religious basis because I believe it, because I told them to believe it. I want them to challenge it. I want them to question it. And I want them to find their own answers and their own faith and their own desires to do whatever it is that they want to do within their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And so going back to something that Selina said, I wonder why they believe that. And coming at it from an area of curiosity. If you come at your teen that way of, okay, tell me more about this. I want to explore this with you. Tell me about these thoughts. Tell me about this belief you have. That is what is going to build the connection. And that's going to open a door to mutual respect. And the reality is your kiddo may grow up to believe differently than what they've been taught, or they may choose to lead a completely different lifestyle than what you lead, and maybe they're going to make choices that you don't necessarily approve of. But if you can keep those doors of communication open from an early age, it's going to set you both up to be able to have space to live in each other's lives. Because I think the goal for most parents, and I know it's my goal, is that my kids still want to be around me after they move out of the house, right? Like I want my kids to want me in their life, and I would like to be involved and in whatever capacity is possible. And so even if, my kids start believing in something completely different, right? I mean, I'm not shy about the fact that I'm very religious. If my kids grow up to be an atheist, well, I hope that they still want me in their life. But if I'm pushing myself on them too much, they might set boundaries. I think keeping the doors of communication open is going to be key here.
I agree with that. That is really the trick to the whole thing, in my opinion, is building that relationship, having the relationship there. And again, when we have the relationship, we have a greater level of influence, not control, but influence on our children, and even into their adult lives, and on our grandchildren, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about what it means to shift from control to guidance. because that can be a very subtle difference, right? I mean, if you go about it the right way. Here's an example. Every morning, we make our kids breakfast before they go to school. Okay. And a lot of that just has to do with helping with the flow of the morning and just getting everyone out the door on time and just kind of keeping things running smoothly. But on the weekends, I make my kids make their own breakfast, right? On the weekends. And so again, it's kind of shifting from this idea of control, like I'm in complete control. And they still, like, to an extent, they get like, oh, hey, what do you want for breakfast, right? But it's just this idea of, it's kind of this shift from, okay, you're going to be responsible and you're going to take care of it yourself, right? Because I know you're capable of doing it. And I think sometimes they don't like that, because I think they like me making their breakfast. I'm like, well, it's Saturday. If you're hungry, go do it yourself. Right? So tell me your guys' thoughts on this. And you don't have to use my breakfast example, right? It's just, that was just an example that I had in our family.
Well, I think, Liz, the same principle applies here. Is it's an ongoing process, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like all of a sudden we wake up and, okay, it's the 13th birthday. They're now teenagers, and now we stop controlling anything in their lives and we just try and guide them. No, it's a process of shifting and making adjustments throughout their lives. And if you've been a controlling mom or dad and you have, teenagers and you want to make that change, then start making that change. Little bits and pieces at a time is perfect. And it really does look like those types of things that you're talking about. Sometimes it's really simple things that aren't super important. Other times it might be something more complex. Maybe it's homework. Maybe you've spent your whole life or your children's whole life of micromanaging every bit of homework that comes into your house that they have to do, and making sure that it's all done properly. And they're getting the great grades, but who's actually getting them? It's probably mom, because she's making them do it. And she did all the work for the science fair project or whatever it is, right? And we start shifting that responsibility back to them and guiding them and say, oh man, I just got a notification on my phone that you've got a C in your history class. Is there something that you need help with? That grade was an A a couple of weeks ago. Just giving them that responsibility so that they can own it. Again, it's scary for us as parents. Well, we don't want them to fail. Well, guess what? Guess what happens when we fail? We learn, we grow. I actually don't like to call it failures. I like to call it just learning opportunities. What did you learn? What did you experience through that? What are you going to do differently moving forward? And that's the guidance, right? Like allowing them to maybe get a bad grade and saying, oh man, that's rough. I know you weren't hoping for a D in algebra. What did you learn? What are you going to do different? And is there anything I could do or mom could do to help you out?
Maybe it starts with us and our thoughts and thinking, and looking at what are some things that you're willing to let go of control and work on your thoughts of allowing that and being okay and not having a story about a way it should or shouldn't be. So maybe just little opportunities, like you said, with breakfast, right? Like they get to decide, they get to be responsible for that. You can step back and be okay with what the choices they are making, where there might be some people that are like, oh, heck no, I could not let my kids just decide what to eat, right?
Mm-hmm.
But isn't that interesting? Like, I think that's a perfect example. Like for you, it's totally fine and you have no problem with them, whatever they choose, right? But you can take that same concept in something else that really like gives you fear or angst when you think about allowing them to make those choices, right? And so it to me, it's just fascinating your brain. What makes one thing different and the other thing? They're absolutely the same. It's really just our thoughts and what we're thinking about it. Because to you, okay, whatever, eat whatever you want for breakfast because you're okay and fine with that. But if it came to, I'm just using this as an example because you said, but like religion, if you had that same thought of like, okay, I trust you, you're independent, make those choices of what you believe and what you think. But it's all really just coming back to you and your thoughts and what you're thinking about that situation is what's creating that for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. And kind of this narrative that we have created for our kids. Because being a parent, we have all these dreams and exciting thoughts of what our kids are going to grow up to be like and what they're going to grow up to do. And we have such great and high hopes for them. And well, kids often don't do what we want them to do because, well, they are independent beings who have their own minds and are going to make their own decisions. And I think when you come at it from that perspective, Selina, it can be freeing as a parent, but it can also be a beautiful thing because, I mean, think about it from the other side, right? When you get to the other side, like, and your kid grows up to do, because your kid probably is, most likely is going to grow up to do incredible, amazing things. And you can look back and say, I helped them on that journey. I gave them the freedom to be who they wanted to be and to explore who they are.
Well, absolutely. Because if I could tell you today, hey, your daughter is going to be fine and she's going to grow up and she's going to be a successful, independent person, then you'd be like, oh, okay. Because what if whatever she is experiencing or choosing is what she has to go through to get to be that independent, strong person?
Yep.
When you tell yourself everything's going to be okay and she's going to be this great independent person, then it helps you in that process.
Yep, absolutely.
Another way you can come at this is asking questions instead of telling them what they need to do. So sometimes even like with chores, right? You're like, you need to go clean your room. If you ask, hey, when are you going to be cleaning your room today? It just makes a little more shift that it puts it back on them and allowing more opportunities for them to have control and being able to make those decisions in what they're trying to get done.
Yeah, absolutely. And your mindset matters just as much as their mindset, right? And so the idea is that they learn to do their own laundry, so they're not calling you when they go to college, Mom, how do I do my laundry? You're like, well, we're in a different state. This might be kind of hard. So, and that's kind of an extreme example, but the point is we're helping them to learn from a young age, independence and independent thinking, right? Okay. So final takeaways.
I want to just validate those scary feelings for parents. Mm-hmm. I know we're just saying, oh, it's scary, but you know what? Let's validate. It is scary. It is scary. Yeah. And we're trying to learn this and we're trying to figure it out ourselves. And so validating, even when our kids are making choices that go against what we think they should be doing, I'm here to validate that that's hard and you should be disappointed and you can be frustrated when those things happen. It's not changing and trying to make it just all happiness and great. We can validate and be okay that it is disappointing and frustrating in certain situations for us. And that's what we're experiencing.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that I wanted to end on is a reminder that we're not in any way suggesting that we just allow our children to make all their decisions and choices. And this isn't like a black or white type of situation where we either allow them the control and we move into this guidance role or we don't. It's a process. And I like the way you put it, Liz, with your breakfast in the mornings. This is one day a week, right? Mm-hmm. 1 day a week or 2 days a week that you're allowing them to choose. Otherwise, you're still making sure they're eating the food that they need and they're getting the nutrition that they need. I was thinking about the same thing along the lines of bedtimes. Sometimes in the summertime, we might allow our children to choose their own bedtime. Mm-hmm. Probably don't want to do that when they have to get up for school the next morning. Right. But we could do it when, there's nothing going on the next day or when it's something they wanted to do and they could learn those lessons of being tired because they didn't get enough sleep or whatever it might be. So it's a gradual process. We still have a responsibility as parents to make sure our children have their needs met. Right. And if we just allow them to choose if they're going to do their chores or not, they're never going to choose to do their chores, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
We've talked about how to manage that in our other podcasts and whatnot, but this is just a process of allowing them to have some autonomy in their life, some independence, and helping to build their character learning to listen to them without judging what they're doing and saying, and developing those connections so that we continue to have influence over or influence on our children throughout their lives.
Awesome.
And once again, if you find yourself having some struggles and difficulties with some of these things, reach out to us. We'd love to help and have a conversation. You go on our website, coreconnection.org, and fill out a free consultation. We're happy to jump on a Zoom call with you and discuss the challenges and see if there's an opportunity for us to help you out and work through some of the challenges that you're experiencing. In addition to that, we have an upcoming free online parenting class that we're going to be doing over Zoom on April 22nd. So you can go to our website, coreconnection.org, click on the upcoming events, and you'll be able to sign up for this parenting class. So we'd love to see you there.
All right. I will also have a link to that workshop, to that free online parenting class. There will be a link to it in our show notes, in our description. So you can find that wherever you are listening to this podcast. Next week, we are going to get into grief and how we can help kids deal with grief. So we will see you all next week. Have a question? How about a topic you'd like us to cover? Send us an email at mentalhealthpod21@gmail.com.